Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chris Frew. I'm the founder of BioBuzz Networks, and I'm very excited today to wrap up what's been a fun year of these conversations on What's the Buzz. But I'm excited for our last 2024 What's the Buzz to be very special guests, group that I've gotten to know very well, and I'm thrilled to share with our community. But we're excited to be here today with Hilary Schulz, CEO of Persephoni BioPartners, and William Heath, CSO of Persephoni BioPartners, for an exciting What's the Buzz. Welcome to you guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're excited to share.
Wonderful. Well, as everyone knows, these programs are really focused on one main thing. Who are the leaders and the people that are helping life science communities thrive? So What's the Buzz is really our opportunity to showcase and share the stories of ecosystem builders, support organizations, and the people that are helping our life science innovation community get more products out to market. So again, couldn't be more thrilled to have a really special one here today. These events in Q4 have been sponsored by one of our other partners, who I've known and worked with for close to 2 decades, Kymanox. Kymanox is a professional services firm in the life sciences who are experts at accelerating development and delivery of your medicines. Whether you're biologics or a medical device, they have an exceptional team of experts all around the country and all around the world to help you get your product to market, and make it easy for you to do so. In fact, they have an operation right there in Philadelphia that was a homegrown organization that joined the Kymanox family last year with an expertise in medical device, and they just launched their own GMP lab there in Philadelphia earlier this year to help support GMP production and development. So thank you to Kymanox and their awesome team for their support. So Hilary, Bill, let's jump into a fun conversation. Tell us about Persephoni BioPartners.
No, happy to do so. Actually, many ask, like, where do you get the name Persephone from? And if you're familiar with the Greek goddess, Persephone, daughter of Zeus, wife of Hades, she went down to the underworld, and then every year, the advent of spring was her coming to the above world. And we took a keen to that storyline, and we see that as, underserved, underdeveloped, underseen assets that are within ecosystems, institutions, etc., is putting them and cultivating them in an environment that sheds light on them. And so that's the origin story of Persephone and our name. Not the queen of the underworld. I just have to say that.
But I bet a lot of founders can resonate with the feeling of being in hell sometimes.
This is true. Any founders out there know that building a company is not sexy, nor is it always fun, but we're here for the long road ahead, and it's exciting. So Persephone, essentially we're a venture studio. We're unique in some aspects in that in proximity to the venture studio and our deep bench of talent, we support even non-portfolio companies that come into our portfolio through fundraising, advisory, consultant services, etc. Knowing that not every early company is in need of the full lift. Maybe they've gotten down the road already thus far, but we can identify areas that we can support them.
That's great. So it's a blended approach where you have your own portfolio, but you also offer services and support for other non-portfolio companies.
That's correct. Yeah.
And I would offer, based on the broad range of experiences and capabilities of the team, one of the biggest issues that these early entrepreneurial groups face is they may have never actually walked this path before, and they may not have access to the right information or the right resources. So oftentimes people will refer to that as the valley of death, where good ideas go to fade away. And, one of the myths is that oftentimes these early startup efforts don't succeed because the science doesn't work. And the reality is oftentimes you're not able to even get to the critical experiments to see whether the science works. So part of what we're able to do as we work with early teams, whether they're part of our portfolio or even if we're just giving them advice, is to actually help steer them in terms of giving them advice, telling them where the potholes are in the road, and understanding how to run the critical experiments that create value and actually create momentum.
Yeah, I do it all the time with early companies. Sometimes they just don't know, so they're doing the wrong experiments, right? Or they're not even thinking about the right ones to do. And at those early stages, like every single like time and investment and dollar matters. Um, so you bring that expertise to make sure the right decisions, the right experiments are being made.
Well, there's this concept called building backwards,
Mhm.
where you have to think about what is it you're trying to deliver and why do those things matter to various stakeholders. They could be to investor groups, they could be to companies that might look to partner, maybe even acquire those technologies. And so it's very easy to get hyper focused on that next timeline, that next deadline, and sub-optimize your trajectory. So I always tell people that the game is won and lost in the very beginning. And so if you can actually set yourself up for success and maintain optionality and do the right experiments, that actually bodes well for the future.
I love that. I love that concept. Hilary, I know Persephone really just launched this year, but it's been in the making for several years. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of the origin story? You told us where the name came from, but what were some of the kind of the gaps or the opportunities you saw that you could really fill in for companies and for your model?
Yeah, no, certainly. I see a portion of it came from my time spending as the executive vice president of org dev at Nucleate Bio. For those that do not know, Nucleate Bio is an international accelerator incubator, and within my scope and growth and purview and responsibility was enabling the scale into various ecosystems. So with that comes discernment of the ecosystems, but where in that programming, when they connect with the inventors at the bench and then pair them with business students, et cetera, and they put them through a curriculum, the output is hopefully that there's companies. But getting that global exposure and the mechanisms needed to translate from bench side in academic setting through licensing then into fundraising, there's a lot of pain points. And I would say there's similar or strings woven through in all the various ecosystems around the world, but there's particular pain points in each given institution and or ecosystem. And I saw a lot of technologies over the years now that you had a lot of potential of helping patients and getting the commercial market, amazing technologies, but through by the virtue of either naive or lack of resources, not thinking from the building backwards, they were not going to make it. So seeing that scalability component and how a venture model could work in various ecosystems where things need to be rigid and then where things need to be more fluid or tunable to the ecosystem. And then my time as an entrepreneur in residence for the state of Pennsylvania, where I operationalized out of B Labs in Philadelphia, that gave me an immersion into the ecosystem of Philadelphia as a whole and building relationships with the tech transfer offices and the builders in that ecosystem and seeing gaps, I think. And that steered into our strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, Nucleate's a great organization. I can see how that kind of translates into like the Persephone model. So as you look at 2024, one of the big accomplishments is really operationalizing your team. Bill, you joined earlier this year. I'd love to hear from you. What made you excited? I mean, maybe tell a little bit about your background. Of what made you excited to join, this group?
Well, there were multiple reasons, honestly. I started my journey in the biopharmaceutical world in discovery research and have obviously moved downstream into development and commercialization as well. But at the time of my retirement from Lilly, I actually had responsibility for therapeutic creation and therapeutic development on a global basis across the therapeutic areas that Lilly was involved in. And as a result, I was involved in a lot of early stage collaborations, academic and otherwise, and then also in contact with groups that were aspiring to do what Persephone was doing, but really finding it very hard to get launched. Or they had aspirations, but for whatever reason, it just wasn't catching fire. And then I actually, somewhat by accident, stumbled across Nucleate about 3 years ago, friends of Hilary's. And that this is how she and I actually initially met. And I became very enamored of the possibilities seeing a lot of young talent that was really trying to learn and grow, but also understanding that there was going to need to be mechanisms that would basically continue the momentum out of that Nucleate effort. And ultimately, based on the talent that Hilary had already been able to attract to the team and just the model, I became convinced that Persephoni was a group that was going to make this happen, as opposed to just talk about it, because they weren't talking about just anchoring themselves to a particular school or a particular, location or a particular therapeutic space. And so this idea of being able to actually help innovators move their science forward, agnostic of therapeutic area or technology. And then finally, I've watched from the sidelines and noticed how the state of Pennsylvania has tremendous talent, tremendous capabilities for whatever reason. And, this is an observation, not a criticism. It just hasn't seemed that the ecosystem has not caught fire the way that, say, Massachusetts has, or several of the centers in California as well. People know those well. And I'm like, I think there's something here where we can help lift the tide, build bridges across cities, schools, et cetera, and help move some of this science that at present is kind of like stifled or bottlenecked into the light. And so I'm very excited about being part of the solution along with Hilary and the rest of our colleagues.
I would love to talk about that a little bit. Obviously, this is a podcast. We focus on ecosystems. So tell us about what are those important elements in an ecosystem that enable these companies to thrive, or ecosystems, it's innovation to thrive. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, on really where Persephoni, and then maybe where Persephoni stands in aiding that.
No, certainly. When you look at kind of the labs, the Langer labs, the George Church's labs, high throughput labs, there's a culture of commercialization from the very inception of ideas and building out experimental design, and amenability to doing killer experiments, in the setting of the lab. In more traditional, we call it grant-funded R01 grants, academic research centers, outside of that environment, that's not typical. I would say it's very atypical. And so what you need to do, or what you have to do, are catalysts from that. As a requisite would be, you have to do the killer experiments. You have to affirm the commercial viability of that. Doing things and converting an academic, in that setting, experimental design to actually high throughput commercial at scale commercial manufacturing. But you need to steer certain decisions earlier. So I would say for those areas that are catalyzed, it's that they have access to that type of environment or expertise where you can engage at the academic bench and begin to have those dialogues so that you're doing the correct things right when it exits. So there are labs within Philadelphia and Pittsburgh that are doing that. You have to have synergy with access to capital and also human capital. So call it the leadership that will steer a company, or having a landing pad for that technology and that license to land and be cultivated.
Yeah, I think that you also need to have an environment where the academic institutions see it part of their mission as actually helping in that movement of technology into practical use. And that can be in terms of bolstering tech transfer offices, which are oftentimes very understaffed in my experience across the universities across the country. And then also having a legal group that is going to actually be very bold in terms of filing for intellectual property. I actually lived an example of this. I was the executive sponsor for the strategic relationship between Lilly and Purdue. And Purdue administration, all the way from the president of the university on down, were just dialed in to figuring out what it was going to take to move the great science that was occurring in the school into practical use. And they were not shy about establishing strategic relationships. They were not shy about flexing their policies and procedures to make things happen. I used to always tell people, I said, Purdue is just open for business. They will figure it out. They're very pragmatic. Maybe it's a Midwestern thing. I don't know. But it was an awesome experience. I mean, it it was the best experience I've ever had in terms of working with an academic institution. And they were also not shy about collaborating with other academic institutions, which oftentimes I find can be a bit of a barrier just because no one has ever done it before. That's part of what Persephone is trying to do, is to break down what people might euphemistically refer to as silos. But oftentimes it's just people just don't know where to get started because no one has ever done it, and try to be the catalyst, if you will, for making some of that magic happen.
Yeah, I think as I'm listening to you both, I think of a couple things. We think a lot about like community and ecosystems, and we think about also in terms of a cultural aspect. So some of the things that you're describing are cultural elements, right? Like within an institution, what's the culture of innovation, right? Are they open to letting, PIs work with a entrepreneur and resident early on to make sure they're guiding experience? Is the president bought in? Like culture is often top-down type of thing that approaches. So there's some elements that, and then the other element is trust, right? Trust is important at these early stages in research and in bringing the investor community in. And I feel like some of the groundwork you all are laying and the work you're doing is impacting that. From my perspective, you're impacting kind of the trust quotient, you're impacting kind of the culture quotient in some of these institutions. One, because of, the careers that you have and the experience you have, but also, the relationship approach. And you said something about building bridges, Bill, like that type of approach. It sounds like that's some of the legwork that you're all doing right now in kind of what you're building.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're speaking to you from Pittsburgh right now. And, I want to give Hilary a lot of credit for sort of seizing the opportunity to start building those bridges. And in the entire time we've been here, we've been commenting on the possibilities of connecting this school or lab in Philadelphia with this group or school in Pittsburgh. And it's just so obvious when you're coming in and looking at it from the outside. And just imagine how much more powerful these efforts could be if you could bring those synergies together time and time again and make it more the norm. I mean, because oftentimes you have great science in several places, but people may not even be aware of what's going on in those other institutions, nor do they actually know how to actually start that connection. We can be that catalyst once again and saying, hey, we want to introduce you guys in Pittsburgh to our friends in Philly or elsewhere, because we think that you guys have some mutual interest, and it's kind of like 1 + 1 = 5.
Yeah. But research by its nature is kind of like you're focused, you're head down. You almost need a catalyst like a Persephone who can say, hey, while you're head down focused, there's another group over here focused, and you should, take this time to connect.
No, certainly. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. And just even in the conversations we've had, and just in the last months, where we've identified an asset in one university that is advancing, and that we've supported, where they were rate limited by a companion diagnostic, where at another institution that we had been in dialogue with, there was a viable candidate technology for a companion diagnostic. So a rising tide lifts all boats. It amplifies the value of each. But it came from building the partnerships, understanding the assets housed within the tech transfer offices, and also other research institutions that we collaborate with in Boston, in Europe, across the board, where there's mutual interest, patient advocacy organizations in the rare disease space that we began engaging with, where they want to feel more traction and they want to feel a greater line of sight and amplification and involvement in technology advancement for their rare disease, where that's usually insulated, or they lay in wait for finding a technology that they could fund. And so we began engaging in those conversations as well. But I would say another kind of secret sauce to our modeling is that when you have a top tier team together under one umbrella, you can diffuse and supported by resources, you can diffusely support and fractionalize your time so that earlier companies are able to leverage the talent of top tier talent that would have been unapproachable otherwise. And so Bill, he far undersold himself when he got here. I knew it was amazing, but we spent hours together with our teams in our portfolio companies, going through the weeds of the medicinal chemistry strategy and the regulatory and the CMC. One of our principals, Eric Hackrell, he previously was the head of manufacturing for Spark Therapeutics in Philadelphia. We are in the weeds. It's not by namesake or recognition of involvement. We are bootstrapped in getting it done. And, it's pizza and some beverages and late nights in the hotel just the other night going through preclinical strategy for one of our portfolio companies. And it's a lot of fun.
Yes.
It's a lot of fun.
Back to my early days.
Poor Bill.
No, I love it. That's, I always miss that part of my career, is being able to work in that sort of like cutting edge. We used to call it the bleeding edge sometime of technology, and really being able to get in and think about the critical experiments and how you could aggressively advance the science and do it from running the killer experiment. So many people are sort of incented. They have a hypothesis. They just want to keep trying to bolster that hypothesis. I personally want to look at, okay, how strong is this hypothesis? Let's do the killer experiment, because if it doesn't fail, that makes it that much stronger. And if it fails, then that means that isn't the right idea to be working on. Maybe we need to recalibrate the strategy. It might be a great idea. We're approaching it incorrectly. So time is the most valuable resource. And so part of what I'm excited about with Persephoni is we believe that we can accelerate these programs tremendously. The team is always laughing at me when I say we can go from X to Y in this amount of time. And they're like, oh, that seems super fast. And I'm like, no, actually, I'm giving you the middle timeline. There's a more aggressive timeline that I'd like to shoot for.
I love that. But, I think there's some lessons learned over the past decade of startup and creation, and some of the things that you're touching on are just that, like, a lot of companies that started with like small teams of inexperienced founders, which you mentioned earlier, like, that spend a lot of that time doing some of the wrong things. And now you have co-founders and Hilary and Bill that come and sit down and be like, we've seen this playbook. Let me tell you, I can't tell you, I'm sure like, you probably hear it all the time, how valuable that is when you fill in those gaps. Like, as a startup, as a founder working through, you have nothing but question marks. And to get a team like Persephoni that can come in and fill in some of those question marks. You're erasing months, if not years off of, a process. So I guess as we, continue to this exploration, like, how does your impact on companies help with funding, right? So, investment is something you mentioned earlier. It's about ecosystems. Every ecosystem needs, a strong investment mechanism. Every startup needs it. How does the work you do impact investment funding, that part of the equation?
No, certainly. How do I put it? So we're saying with the catalyst in the setting of an asset exiting the academic setting, a true to form spin out. The greatest postulation for fundability is if they exit at the right time. You can exit too late or you can exit too early. You may have not de-risked the asset sufficiently. Also, you may have not affirmed the correct indication, right? It starts there because indication immediately translates into commercial viability and returns for the investors downstream. How we postulate our portfolios and those that we serve through our venture studio is we have investment partners of funds, both family offices, true to form venture. To give you an idea for portfolio companies, we've screened just over 200 assets to select the 4 portfolio companies that are on board and going in flight near term. And within that, we've taken them to our investment partners and pressure tested them. Did they check or what are the boxes we need to check in this next iteration and phase of value inflection point? So we have assurances that, one, we're QCing our financial and investment strategy. That is a mechanism but I would say it's just our great team that have amazing networks in the investor space that have executed very large and prominent transactions where we are early, right? So we're a year old now, but it's their reputation that has given us an opportunity to get to the decisionaries at the fund, not the traditional deal sourcers or gatekeepers at funds. And that has accelerated a lot of our advancements.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the couple of other things that we're able to do is we very much value continuing to have the founders or the innovators engaged.
Yes.
There is a model where people just sort of like snatch the technology and run with it and mail a check if all goes well back to the scientists that created the science. We very much want them to be involved. And I see this not only in terms of them being the scientific expert, this is also a way to help them understand how this is done, so that when they do it the second time or the third time, they're much better prepared. And, additionally, and this is going to sound like I'm giving us a bit too much credit, when we bring portfolio companies or ideas to these key decision makers, at whether it's at funds, big pharma, you name it, they know that we have actually done extensive diligence and that we kind of know what to look for, and we're not going to bring anything that's kind of speculative.
Mm-hmm.
And so that automatically increases their comfort level that what they're looking at is still early. These early things still have a certain probability of technical success, but we've already kicked the tires pretty extensively, and we're convinced that the car can go down the road. And that's invaluable. I can tell you, being on the other side, you invest as much in the people as you do the science.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes actually the people are more important than the scientific idea, because there's a lot of cool scientific ideas out there. But are you bringing things forward that people believe that you can actually execute on? And do they believe that you will do your utmost to make it happen? I think that's another thing that Persephoni does, is we're all in.
Mm-hmm.
We're not just like, saying, here's some advice, good luck with your lives. We're in the weeds. We're helping them make it happen. Their success is our success.
We say chop wood, carry water. That's what we say over here, right? Like we're out there with the team, with our clients, and that sounds like you're the same. You're in there. I immediately had the visual of you and Hilary just eating pizza, going through going through reviews to like make sure you got your portfolio company what they needed. I mean, you're in essence co-founders at this point, right? You're in the weeds at that level. That's great. So Hilary, it's been a year. What are some of the things you're proud of this past year?
There's many, I think, things I'm proud of, but most chiefly it's our team. Proud of them for, the sweat equity that they've given in the beginning, right? Betting on, a dream really of building a mechanism that is doing things a little bit differently, right? What is it? What did you say, Bill, when Bill initially came on board? And I was speaking on the flexibility of how we wanted to build this, and he's like, something along the lines of it not being rigid. That is actually a definition of innovation. But chiefly it's our team. They're exceptional. We have an amazing culture. I see them engaging with the inventors and the tech transfer and evaluating together, ideating, throwing ideas back and forth. But I think it's just their true to form conviction behind what we're doing. And that doesn't always come with teams. We've been very blessed to get a very united and cohesive team from the beginning.
I think the team is a learning culture, not afraid to experiment, not afraid to iterate. Great respect amongst the team members, which is really important to have authentic and open conversations. People are not afraid to challenge me if they disagree with my perspective. I actually invite that. It's critical. But equally so, we're very open with the folks that we're interacting with. We're not sugarcoating it. If we think that they're doing something incorrectly or suboptimally, we'll say, look, this is probably not the best way to do it. We'll do it with respect, but we'll say, there's a better way to do this, and here's the reason why. And so let's work together to make that happen. And so I think it's a learning team. What I've seen in the past is people get very sort of like focused on, this is my specialty, this is my wheelhouse. Nobody else gets an opinion on this area of expertise. And we're just cross-pollinating. And we have a very free-flowing dialogue. We have, our Slack channel where we're constantly throwing around ideas. We're very iterative in that regard. So it's a healthy culture, and I really respect that because you need that.
Mhm. Well, we're sitting here just a few weeks away from 2025. Anything you can share that you're excited about the new year, or any milestones you're looking to take the company to?
Certainly. We certainly will have some big announcements for some portfolio companies come to the new year. But I think what's most exciting is the foundation we've set for the amplification and resources to enable this work at scale. And so we'll be announcing some funds that will complement our venture studio and funding partners here in the near term, and invite others to participate if they deem interested. But that will enable that cross-pollination and cross-institutional collaboration with the individuals that we're in dialogue with, and really begin to bolster up academic work and translating it at the bench. We're also growing our team and our capabilities coming into the new year, that I think it's just exciting. All of the assets that we've selected to portfolio, one of our selection criteria is a flexion point at 3 years or less, with majority at 1 and 2 years. So there should be, if we bet right, let's cross our fingers, some inflection points over the next year for sure.
Yeah, I use the analogy of building a house. So if you've ever built a house from a sort of a fresh lot, they, clear the land, they remove all the rocks and that, and then there's a very slow period where they're putting the foundation or digging the basement out and doing it. And then all of a sudden, overnight, the entire house frame springs up and they start to outfit it. And we're at that phase where you're going to see very rapid expansion.
Well, that's some exciting things to look forward to in the new year. And I think just to bring it full circle around back to ecosystems as well, I think it's truly exciting that you've chosen Philadelphia as your home base and Pennsylvania. I'm excited about the foundation that you've all laid. I think across the board, Philadelphia has been building a foundation for a while now, and there's just an amazing amount of momentum in that town with that community and that ecosystem. I think it's just amazing that Persephoni is part of that equation. And I'm excited for to work with you and for you to be part of that Philadelphia ecosystem, because there's some special things that make that community, and Persephoni is a big part of that.
No, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thanks for spending your time with me this afternoon and sharing the Persephoni story. Any closing thoughts, or anybody, ways that people can reach out to you to connect with you?
No, certainly. Well, obviously our email, but I will say that we love collaborating, and those CIC, for example, where we operationalize our office. Biolabs has been, and Melina has absolutely been amazing. Chris, you as well, but we want all of this works better when we collaborate together. And so we want to be good partners in that and serve the community and those that are doing some of or all of the things that we're doing. I think Philadelphia needs to get some wins on the table, more of them. They have some, but we can get some more.
Have safe and happy holidays for everybody.
Yes.
Likewise, have a happy holidays to you both, and very happy new year. And thank you for closing out the year with me. This has been exciting. It's great to share your story. This has been a fun year for us. We started this kind of podcast, and I get to talk with, a nice job. I get to talk with amazing people like you that are helping companies grow, helping ecosystems grow. So my favorite conversations of the week are these, and I just can't thank you enough for helping to close out this year with me.
Thank you.
That's good. Thanks, Chris.
All right. Thank you all for joining for this final What's the Buzz of 2024. Happy holidays and happy new year to everybody. Thank you.